All right, everyone. Here's another podcast, and I have today with me Darren Sherbane, and I'm sure you can all see him. Let me just tell you a little bit about Darren. Um, I met him in Phuket. I don't know, about 6 years ago or something like that.
Something like
Um,
that,
yeah, and I actually met him through his wife, Vanessa, who wasn't his wife at the time. She was working with me. She's a nutritionist, and she's got, I don't know, she wears a few thousand hats. She's a yoga instructor. She's a very, very bright woman. Anyway, she was working with me in Phuket at the Life Co, and then I met Darren through her. But he had been living there already, and he's been in Thailand. He had been in Thailand a long time. But anyway, he's a kinesiologist, and if you guys don't know what that is, it refers to muscles. Kinesiology refers to muscles. So it's sort of like a subspecialty of physiology, right? Physiology looks at everything from the brain to the heart to the muscles. Anyway, so that was kind of his specialty in physiology, and and so anyways, and the reason that's so important is that I want you to think about, we're always talking about metabolism, right? How the body is basically taking something from the environment in the form of nutrition and gases like oxygen and turning it into energy. And it's the processing of that energy that's called metabolism. And so when things are getting bigger and we're building, it's called anabolism. And when things are being broken down, it's called catabolism. But the whole process is known as metabolism. So anyway, guess what gets all that moving and started and keeps it happening here are the muscles. And so you can all imagine if you didn't have arms and legs. You know, we're always like too lazy to get up and go do something. But I'll tell you something, if you didn't have arms and legs, you'd be you'd give anything to be able to get up and carry a bag, take the trash out. So anyway, we that old thing, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. So anyway, muscles and muscle metabolism begins starts it's the engine. It gets things going. So anyway, that's what Darren has specialized in, and he's been at Oasis in the U.S. now since 2022, and he's teaching our students there. We call people their students because they're learning. They've come to learn how to live a life that will result in health rather than anything else. But prior to that, so when I met him from 21 to 22, he was a team leader for decathlon sports in Ontario. So that was actually you were doing that at the same time, and then what? You were the head coach, founder, and manager of physiotherapy in Phuket.
yeah.
That was right at the same time, I guess. And then
Same time.
2018 to 2020, you were also in Thailand, health promoter and speaker. He spoke at the Heat conferences, which is a place that I spoke at too. And it's funny we never met. Um,
Well,
and
can I
then
just interrupt for a sec?
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember.
please,
I
please.
remember the first time I heard you speak. And I like telling this story. You walked out and you just looked out and you said, "You doctors, you got to stop killing people. Louis Vuitton and hamburgers are metastasizing CFC, cancer, right?"
Right,
I'm just
right.
like, "Holy, who is this guy?" Like
Yeah.
I'm listening. You got my attention, brother.
Well, that's good. Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Doctors, uh, they hear that, but they almost can't it doesn't register. But I remember if you go back on my YouTube, um, I think it was the first public lecture I ever gave, and I was like, it was at the Cancer Society, Cancer Cure Society, I guess in LA. And anyway, I'd never given a public lecture. I got up and there was all these people. And anyway, and I knew there was like half of them were doctors, or maybe 60%. And I said, the thing about doctors, I said is, I can't even eat lunch with you guys because I can't watch what you eat. I don't even want. And you know what? At the end of the lecture, a bunch of people came up. None of them were doctors. The doctors left. Only the people,
Oh yeah.
non-doctors. Yeah. So anyway, so Darren, but anything, and then Darren, he's been 2015 to 2017. He was movement therapist and holistic health manager in Phuket, and before that, he worked with. Was this is where you were working with? Oh, that's was adult and children educator. But
Yeah.
there was one where you were and then instructor of sports medicine back in 2005, 2008.
Yeah.
University of Winnipeg. And where was the one where you were working with, wasn't it with addiction or something?
Yeah. That was still, I was wearing a lot of hats when I was in Thailand. So I was working at a recovery clinic, and we were using movement as an intervention of to help with addiction and alcoholism. So
Right, right. So
very interesting, very interesting
fantastic.
stuff. But
So back,
you know,
so that was back in 2004, 2004, 2005, and then, but anyway, so his education, of course, was a physiology with a kinesiology focus, University of Winnipeg, and I think before that, 1992 is actually political science, but that has nothing to do with this. Anyway,
oh,
the
no,
point is,
then I didn't know what I was going to save the
yeah, you
world. I was a
right.
great thinker. Yeah, great thinker, and that's a funny story because I had ex- extreme right out of university, extreme left wing ideology, extreme. Went out first time I lived on my own, and I'm like, no, I gotta bust my balls a little bit, and make a living, make a
Right,
living.
right,
So
right.
you changed just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we're really different. And that whole left wing. I think it might have been the same school Trudeau came out of. I think.
Oh, yeah.
But we won't get
We
into
won't go.
that.
We won't touch on that one today.
No politics. But anyway, I'll tell you what's special about Darren and what I haven't been able to find anyone in the world that does it is um, I've always known that exercising like for 2 hours, an hour and a half, really freaking out, sweating and lifting and all that stuff is as unnatural as sitting at a desk for 8 hours. Okay, and that's what our lives have become. And the reason exercise exists, that we use that word, is because we had to invent a way to move our bodies, since most of our lifestyles, most of our occupations no longer require that. I was thinking, if it wasn't for pesticides, I think the best job in the world would be a gardener,
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
they're
yeah.
bending and moving and so what I've always thought, and then Darren brings it to life. That's why I love him. But what I always like, when if you ever want to know what should I do in this certain situation, how would I do it? Just imagine it was 7,000 years ago. What time would you go to sleep? Hmm. Well, probably within an hour after sunset. Okay, and what would you be doing all day? Well, from the moment you got up till you almost until you ate or whatever, you'd be bending, standing, walking, twisting, lifting. That's what you'd be doing. And so when I went to Vanuatu, where they never heard of a gym, they don't know what lifting weights are. These guys are walking around. They're wearing just like some sort of thing on the bottom, but they had the bodies that we would think, oh wow, these guys are buffed. They must be going to the gym. They don't even know what a gym is. They were just living life naturally. So that's what Darren teaches. He says, and he doesn't call it exercise. He calls it, let's have fun. Let's be kids again. And that's all we really need to do. And so the three areas we want to talk about are aerobic conditioning, and strength, and then finally balance. Those are like three fundamentals. And I want to just preface all this with an understanding. You all know that we don't like to use that zodiac sign that falls between Gemini and Leo, called that is symbolized by a crab. Okay, Cancer. We don't like to use that because that word is not only not descriptive, but it's got a lot of money behind it to make sure you're scared to death when you hear it. And that's it. It hurts me to say it, and it hurts you to hear it. So we call it what they are: the chronically fermenting cells. Now,
Hmm.
fermentation is another word for glycolysis. Okay. Now, glycolysis is this. There's basically two different kinds, and that's an important distinction. There's what we call anaerobic glycolysis. What does that mean? Okay. The prefix "an" means not. So whatever you have, so anaerobic, so no oxygen. So if I run up the street, and I get up to the street, my legs are hurting. The reason they're hurting is because I have exceeded my aerobic capacity, my ability to metabolize the sugar with the oxygen, and I'm now gone into glycolysis, which is fermentation. And the product of fermentation is lactic acid. And that's the pain in my leg, that lactic acid. So if I go, the CO2 balances it out, the pain goes away, and then I go back into a mitochondrial normal kind of metabolism. Now, so that means so a normal cell in the presence of oxygen will go through mitochondria. It's called oxidative phosphorylation. Don't need to remember that word. And as soon as the oxygen is gone, there's a fail-safe mode because the cell still needs to make energy. It goes into glycolysis. Now, glycolysis is inefficient. One molecule of glucose only makes two energy packages called ATP, whereas through the other way, one molecule of glucose makes 38. So that's a big difference. But glycolysis or fermentation is faster, so you can actually turn out more energy. So in the same amount of time with glycolysis, you will have produced more energy, although you would have needed 19 times more glucose. So that's why CFC is cancer. It feeds on sugar. Now, but what do CFCs do? What's different about them? They have what's called the Warburg effect, because Otto Warburg got the Nobel Prize in 1931 for his discovery that CFCs are basically a failure in cellular respiration. Okay? And what he discovered is this: in the presence of oxygen and in the situation where there's no oxygen, doesn't matter, they still ferment. So that's called aerobic glycolysis. Okay? A normal cell has glycolysis only when there's when it's exceeded its aerobic capacity. That's anaerobic. So this is aerobic. So whether or not there's oxygen in there or not, the cell is going to 85% of the energy that a CFC is going to make is through glycolysis or fermentation. So that's a very important distinction, because Darren's going to talk about it. And the other one I wanted to mention that is yeah, and basically, so what Darren does is he teaches people how to, you don't have to go to a gym, you don't have to buy weights, you don't have to do all that. Let's say you live in a small apartment, you don't have, and how do we stay in shape in a small apartment? So anyway, let me up to you,
Yeah,
Darren.
yeah. I just wanted to pick up on a couple things that you said. Going back to, how we met at some of the and listening to you talk at the conferences in Bangkok, I share this story. You are the only doctor who has ever come up to me and talked to me about sarcopenia. Like, I just don't understand why it's not on people's radar, which is cool. That's okay. But it's sarcopenia is why we lose strength, power, and muscle as we age. And you can understand just how bloody important that is. But the other one I wanted to say was, I remember one of my best memories in Phuket when the two of us were climbing along in the beach, crawling around in the sand and hanging from trees and stuff. That was playing, man.
Yeah, I used to go down I used to meet Darren in the morning, and yeah, we'd climb trees and we would do things in the sand. It was amazing. It was amazing. And I had, no gym, no gym.
No, no, and I think that brings us to a really important thing. A lot of us will hear, you know what, you got to get more exercise. Number one, that's misleading, dogmatic, and doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. But so at the clinic, what we do is we don't use the word, as you alluded to, we don't use the word exercise. Let's play. Let's go play. Hey, let's go play. I mean, when we were kids, we were talking about this earlier. We'd skip across the field. We didn't care if anybody was looking. We danced. We jumped. We made our own games, and that's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. And something, Doc, I've talked to you about before. It's how playful I am as a reflection of who I serve. If I'm wrapped up in what so and so or what's she going to think about me, I'm not serving God. I'm serving myself. I'm serving myself. I'm serving myself. So at the clinic, we want to get rid of this exercise, and as some of our guests and students have told me, it's great because exercise has this intimidation, and let's get rid of this whole nonsense of no pain, no gain. I mean, I think it sets us up for a lot of problems. I think the other thing too, and this is very important, what you just said, I can move in a very small apartment. I can move in a clinic. I can move in my stairwell. I can move outside. I don't need to go somewhere. I don't need to go for a magic hour. Think about it this way. How many of us are caught up in, you know what? I need to go for an hour. Well, I don't have an hour. So you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to do it today. It's like, no,
Exactly.
we can get a benefit in, I'm standing right now. We get a benefit in standing. And one of the, one of our weekly education classes I do with movement is looking at just the health benefits of standing. And I'll just jump into a really quick study, looked at how standing has, I quote, small but significant impact on glucose, which is great. So even standing, and I remember one of our guests at the clinic said to me, she looked at me and you could almost see the hamster wheel going on and the smoke coming out of her ears, and she goes, "So you're telling me while I'm waiting for Tabia, that was her cat, to make up her mind, I'm waiting there standing at the front door. Is she going to go in or out? I'm getting a benefit." I'm like, "Yeah. So let the cat in or out as much as you want throughout the day."
Right, right. No, let me give one
For sure.
definition because a lot most people don't understand scientific jargon. But anyway, when the word uh, it comes from sarcolemma, but sarco, when it's used as a prefix, it refers to muscle. Penia refers to less, small. Okay, so sarcopenia means less, small, and so we see that it's a common part of being elderly. Your muscles,
Yes.
it's called atrophy. You know that old expression: if you don't use it, you lose it. Well, that's what happens. So as you get older, of course, you're going to get sarcopenia, but you can get sarcopenia as a non-elderly person by just not moving.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll see. It's going to happen to everybody, and we'll usually see it. It's going to start in our 30s, where we're going to see this decrease. Then it'll be more progressive, the 40s, 50s, and once we hit 50s, it's really going downhill. 60s, 70s, and that's when we get into trouble. And what was a huge eye opener for me, that it kind of, these dots started to connect for me, was how CFCs is accelerated aging. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh man, we've got to get a handle on this ASAP. ASAP.
That's a very good point because um, when I was looking for doctors to train uh, in Thailand, uh, most of them had a background in anti-aging or well aging,
Right.
and they said, "Well, I don't know if I can do work with you because," and I said, "Listen, the only difference between an anti-aging clinic and what we do is the intensity." But it's
Right.
the same things. It's the same things that we need to do. Because here's the thing. Remember, we're not looking to get rid of anything. We're looking to restore health. Okay? Because not only will you, if you restore health, not only will you not have CFCs, but you won't have gastritis, you won't have arthritis, you won't have depression, you won't have insomnia. So we don't want to just get rid of one thing. We want to restore health. It's a completely different paradigm.
It's a completely different paradigm, and I think this reminds me of a conversation we had, where I showed you a study. I said, "Yeah, this is great, but I'm concerned about this. I'm concerned about rising lactate levels in the body if we do this protocol." And I remember you said to me, "Yeah, but you're forgetting one thing, Darren. We're a healing clinic," and it's just like, off to the races. Let's go with this one. That
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
what
yeah.
what is it what is it doing? And we've discussed, we're going to do a whole podcast just on movement in the brain, but we'll touch a little bit on it today. But why is it important, to understand, the metabolism of CFCs? Why is it important to understand glycolysis and what you turn? I love the analogy you used. I got to run for the bus. I can't meet the demand aerobically, so now I've got to go anaerobic. I think that's very, very important, because that will bring us right into, let's kick it off with a discussion of cardio aerobic. So we hear that thrown out, oh, you got to do your whatever cardio aerobic, but it's so important, because the heart is going to be the driver and delivery system, and of what is being delivered through the blood.
Mhm.
It's extremely, extremely important. So if we look at aerobic, and I think we should just go really briefly, let's just talk, well, what is cardiac output? And that's how much blood I am able to deliver and get returned back to my heart in each minute. So how much blood, cardiac output, and that's going to be influenced by stroke volume and heart rate. And let's keep it very simple. I think everybody knows what heart rate is, right? How many times per minute my heart beats. When Dr. Lodi's running to the bus, guess what's happening to his cardiac output? Increases. Got to deliver more blood. Heart rate is going to go up. Stroke volume is going to increase. And why is that important? That's important because that is going to be an indicator of how we can deliver nutrients, oxygen around the body, but how it also gets returned.
Right. And stroke volume, just what it sounds like. Every stroke, the
Yep.
volume that comes out. Stroke volume. So that's the amount of volume that comes out of the ventricle of the heart with every stroke. And every stroke is a heartbeat. So
Is is a heartbeat. And so now Dr. Lodi is he's running to the bus. Everything's gonna go up, which acutely, that's great. That's great. If he's walking to the bus stop, it's not going to go up quite as high, but there's still going to be that delivery, that delivery. And what do we know how it impacts CFC? And as we discussed, aging, as we age, that gets diminished. The ability to deliver blood, right? So our cardiac outbeat is going to be diminished. We've got to also just very briefly, I just want to go into it just very briefly, something called VO2 max. So how much oxygen I'm able to consume per kilogram per minute. And this is very important because we know that as we age, our VO2 is going to decrease. We know that with CFCs, our VO2 is going to decrease. Here's the exciting news. With movement, we can actually change it, which is extremely exciting. Do I have to be putting on my Fitbit, my tight little Lululemon pants and go to the gym or make it too complicated? No, it can be as simple as, hey, let's go out for a 10-minute walk. That's simple.
so
That's
Darren,
simple.
so Darren,
Yes,
give an a couple of ways people can improve their aerobic uh, capacity
for sure.
in any situation, and how frequently should they do it?
For sure. Yeah, for sure, for sure. So we know that there's a minimum dose that everybody needs to do, and that's 150 minutes a week. Okay, 150 minutes a week. Does that mean it has to be all done on at once or in big doses? No, we can do it in minimal doses. And I think it's very important to remember the difference between not doing anything and doing even 2 minutes is enormous. That we get a benefit. That we get a benefit. But even as simple as going out for a 10-minute walk. Start with, if you're not doing anything right now, let's just start with a daily 10-minute walk if possible. I know some of your followers are in colder climates right now, so it's not possible to go outside, but as much as possible, get outside. Get outside. So what I suggest to people is, let's do it a 10-minute walk in the morning and a 10-minute walk at night. That's going to give us 20 minutes for the day, and let's do that times 7. That gives me 140 minutes. And I can pick up a couple little movement snacks here and there throughout the week. I think for most people, 10 minutes is very doable. Don't you agree, Doc?
Yep, yep, yeah. And when they do that 10 minutes, uh, do they go as fast as they can without hurting themselves or what?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting question. And one of the things that we do a lot at the clinic is teach people about something called the talk test. So and this is where we jump back to anaerobic, aerobic. If I'm able to talk when I'm walking, that means I'm working aerobically, which is great. If I can't talk, I've gone above what we call lactate threshold. And
Hmm.
you know what? It's yeah, but
Yeah.
if we want to get an improvement, especially in our mitochondria, did you want to touch a little bit? I can't remember when you talked about CFCs. We see dysfunctional mitochondria and why it's so important to work on the
Right, right,
mitochondria.
right. So remember we talked about the mitochondria is where it basically it it takes 6 oxygen molecules and 1 glucose, and it goes through the process and turns into ATP, which are energy carrying molecules. So 38. Now, um, so it's very efficient. One becomes 38. Very, very efficient.
Mhm.
So um, what happens is because there's so much oxygen in these little mitochondria, if you have oxygen, you wind up getting what are called free radicals. They're called reactive oxygen species, okay, which are damaging. Okay, so there's a lot of them in mitochondria. So when you look at a cell, the most vulnerable part of the cell are the mitochondria because they're full of
Mhm.
these free radicals. So if you happen to live on planet Earth in the 21st century, you're going to be exposed to all these toxins and stress and
Yeah.
EMF and you put it all together. So they're going to have an effect on the most easily damaged part of the cell, which are the mitochondria. So yeah, so that's it. So when we knock out 30%, 40% of them, now the cell has to go into a complete fail-safe mode of energy production called glycolysis.
So and this is where that simple walking. I'm using the talk test, and I'm going to walk just a little bit faster than my talk test. So I got to put a little effort into having a conversation with you. That's classified as quote unquote zone 2 aerobic training, and we know with zone 2 training, that's where we see a lot more mitochondrial biogenesis. Okay, so we're getting these
Biogenesis means
so we're getting
growth.
more volume in the mitochondria. So these
Right, right.
dysfunctional ones, we're bringing them back. We're bringing them back into balance now with what they were designed to do.
And we'll make more. See, the
Yeah.
beautiful thing about mitochondria is that they have their own DNA. They don't require the nucleus in order to make new ones. Like all other parts of the cell, it has to be produced in the nucleus. But the mitochondria have their own DNA. So if they get, in other words, if the need for more energy goes up, then it's going to produce new mitochondria. So that's called biogenesis. Genesis means making more. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's that's
So that's
so
it. That's one of the good things about the aerobic then is
yeah.
biogenesis
Is
of
is the
mitochondria.
mitochondrial biogenesis? I mean, right now let's leave it at that. And why is that so important? Well, it's going to also help to increase my VO2 max, which is basically how much oxygen I can consume per minute based on my body weight. And this is really important, and I've shared this with you, that we all know probably not a good idea for Darren to smoke, is it? And I went out and I got just to add a little theatrics for this. So it's not a good idea for Darren to smoke. It's going to increase my all-cause mortality by 40%. If my VO2 max is in the bottom 20 percentile for my age, my all-cause mortality goes up by 50%. So it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it, that all-cause mortality smoking only goes up by 40%, but extremely low VO2 max, it goes up by 50%. But
Mm,
simple, right? 10-minute walk in the morning, 10-minute walk at night,
right.
20 minutes a day. Just to get going. And this is what's, you're talking about. I was just getting so excited listening, but we can change what's going on with our mitochondria. This is the same thing about VO2 max, that if I'm in that bottom 20th percentile and I move up to just average, I am going to receive incredible, profound benefits. More so than if you took somebody like me who has, a very good VO2 max for my age, and I'm able to increase it just by a couple more milliliters of oxygen per kilogram. It won't have the same impact as somebody who's just starting off here and goes to here, which is that's the resiliency of the human body.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
Fascinating, man. Fascinating.
And one other thing with VO2 max, and this I'm going to tie in here, uh, food. Now, we all have
Mm,
heard that there's omega 3s and omega 6s, right? Those are the two fats that are what they call essential fatty acids. And so, and we've all heard that, well, the omega 3s are good and the omega 6s are bad. Well, that's not true about it. You said there's nothing in the body that's bad or good. Like estrogen's bad. No, no. What's always required is balance. And once you have
mm.
balance, because there's not bad estrogen, good at there each one is God wouldn't have made it if it was bad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it turns out omega 3s and omega 6s are both essential. And but the reason they say that is because the modern diet is like 30 to 1 omega 6 to 3s, because we're the foods we eat. However, and those omega 6s are really bad omega 6s, like French fries and stuff.
They
But
sh-
here's the other thing that's interesting. If you're living a perfectly healthy life, you would need to 1 to 1. Why? Interesting. Omega 3s they begin the cascade for anti-inflammation. Omega 6s begin the cascade for inflammation. Oh, inflammation's bad. No, no, no. Inflammation is necessary to heal. I hit my finger with a hammer, it's got to get inflamed, and that's how it heals. But if I keep doing it, it becomes chronic inflammation, and that's damaging, right? So inflammation is not bad, it's necessary. So actually in the healthy world, you'd have the 1 to 1 requirement. You need 1 to 1. But because of the way we eat, we actually need like a 3 or 4 or 5 to 1 of omega 3s to 6s. But anyway, the point I wanted to make was that omega 6 that we think is bad, let me just tell you what it does. This is just one of its roles, which blew my mind when I learned it. Most of our cells have omega 6s in the membrane. What the omega 6 in the membrane does is it functions with oxygen the same way that insulin functions with glucose.
oh wow.
So insulin lets glucose get in the cell. Omega 6s let oxygen get in the cell. So if I'm running and I've got my heart pumping and all that, and I've got really low omega 6s, I can only get my VO2 up to a certain amount because I need the omega 6 to get that oxygen in the cell.
Hmm.
So there,
Hmm.
there it shows you, like, because we're not just talking about movement, we're not just talking about diet, we're not just talking about, it's all of it. It's
It's it's
lifestyle.
it's it's everything, Doc. And we talked earlier about, you can't just cherry pick one or two of these. It's everything works together. And one interesting thing that I think we'll talk about in the mind body is we'll bring up the study that looked at how your mood impacts your mitochondrial health as well. So there's another one we throw into the what's going on up here. Are you getting your daily doses, not once and I forget about it, of meditation? So my mood is and oh, I almost tried to get away with it today. I got to tell you this. I was at the red light. It was early morning, and I'm doing this, right? Oh, I should just go through it. Nobody's gonna see me. Nobody's gonna see me. Nobody's gonna see me. And I immediately thought, are you trying to sneak this past God too? Like, how many times do I try to sneak things past God? Like,
Right,
I can get away with it. I can get away with it. But
right,
it's realizing that what's going on up here also impacts our health. So
yeah,
and I think that is the key is as well. So we talked very briefly about VO2 max and aerobic, and if I'm sedentary right now, how I can just start 10-minute walk in the morning, 10-minute walk at night. Why in the morning, at night? That 10-minute walk, sun is out, direct sunlight, boom, no hat, no sunglasses, starts at stimulating the pineal gland for my circadian rhythm so
mhm,
I can get a better night's sleep.
exactly,
Kind of weird, right? What?
right,
I walk in the sunshine in the morning so I can sleep better at night? Yes. Please,
yeah,
please, please. I've just moved into a new place, and I haven't been hitting my morning sunshine walks as well as I should be. And I notice I'm sleeping like there is no sleep like I have been before. So I've got that 10-minute walk in the morning. Then at night, why am I doing it at night? because, and we'll jump into this a little bit more when we talk about muscle, because I can use muscle to divert glucose from CFCs and store it as glycogen.
Right, right. Explain that a little bit.
Sure,
Is that what
sure. Yeah, let's do that right now. So, as you said, CFCs, and this is the analogy I like to use. They love glucose, right? They love glucose. They love glucose. So CFCs love glucose and they love insulin as well. The two go hand in hand. When I start to move more, it will help to control the metabolism of glucose and insulin. Your muscles, my muscles, we all have them, are the biggest sink or sponge for glucose we have in the body, and we can store glucose as glycogen in the muscle. So if we can think about it this way, we are diverting substrates from CFCs into other organs. Okay, and muscle is an organ, and we're diverting it. So we're creating a metabolic shield. We're creating a metabolic shield. And when I first started seeing this evening walk after our last meal, now I know you usually recommend, rest a little bit, let your food digest. That is so important. The body can't do two things at once: resting and digesting, or moving. It's got to digest. My own experience, and with some people I've worked with, we do the dishes, boom, we get out the door. If you're a guy like me, I do the dishes, I sit around, chances are I'm going to wiggle out of my evening walk. So yeah. So I think
Well,
it's
actually, Darren, when you told me about that, before you moved to the U.S., you were
yeah.
this is great before 2020. And then I looked it up and I saw actually that not heavy movement, but light
Yeah.
movement actually allows your stomach to process faster. So
Yes.
it actually improves digestion, okay? But you shouldn't go like for a run or for a swim
No,
or anything
no,
real
no.
active. But just a little movement helps. So like an after dinner
Yeah.
walk.
And let's look at, we got to look at the whole picture, right? If I go for that run after dinner, if I go for that heavy exertion after dinner, what's that going to do to my sleep that night? What is that going
Yeah.
to do with my sleep? And it's really interesting that and I was looking at research from type 2 diabetics. They implemented this, just getting them to walk that 10, 15, even 20 minutes after the last meal of the day, what it did to their glucose levels, as opposed to a structured exercise program. Right? We don't. I think I'm no exception to the rule. I like to think I'm a complicated guy. I need complicated solutions. Well, let's keep it simple, stupid. Right? Kiss, kiss, Darren, kiss. So we talked a little bit about glucose and insulin. I want to get back to those walks. So I got 10 minutes. 10 minutes times 7 is 140 minutes. Big study came out of the UK looking at 19,000 people. 120 minutes a week in a natural environment, being out in nature, leads to increased health and well-being. So there, I'm at 140. I've exceeded my 120 for the week. Perfect. Perfect. Right. And it doesn't have to be, you're in Thailand right now. It doesn't have to be on a beautiful beach. It can just be outside.
Right.
Outside. And this is what you alluded to. We're not living natural lives anymore. We don't go outside. Who wants to go outside? It's comfy in my house. Comfy. I can sit down on the couch, climate controlled. But if we look at,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, let's get back to insulin again. And I just want to bring in another study looking at people diagnosed with breast cancer. And I looked at this study. They were looking at biomarkers of people diagnosed with breast cancer. The first thing that was alarming, extremely alarming to me in this study, that the mean average sedentary time was 490 minutes. That's 8 hours, man, of sitting. That is 8 hours of sitting. But what they found, that is, if people on a daily basis just did 10 additional sit to stand transitions, that's it. So I'm in my chair and I stand up. I do 10 additional ones, not all at once, Because if you're a guy like me, it's like, oh, I'm going to get them out of the way right away, right? No, it's like, let's space them out throughout the day. Maybe start at 8 a.m. and then down to 6 p.m. There's your 10, one every hour. I will lower my fasting insulin levels, which is
Wow.
just, yeah.
Wow.
So it's those simple little steps. So Darren, I'm coming to you. I have CFCs. I have been sedentary. Where do I start? 10-minute walk in the morning, 10-minute walk at night. And let's just worry about not ticking the boxes, right? Make a spreadsheet, put it on your fridge. Everybody loves ticking boxes of, I did, my 10 additional sit to stands throughout the day. And that's immediately going to start to change what's happening metabolically in your body.
Now, you were saying maybe it was another part of the physiology, but getting up slowly and going back down and doing it 5 times.
Yeah, we can do that. Let's jump in a little bit into the strength one.
Right.
I just wanted to touch on one thing, and we'll get to that, the slowly and quickly. I shared with you earlier, looked at, well, maybe too, we can have a different effect by doing higher intensities, by going more anaerobic. And we had this discussion before we started the podcast, and I said, glycolysis is amazing to me, because in one environment inside CFCs, it's doing this cascade of just destruction and growth inside the tumor microenvironment. But if I'm doing it in another context, i.e. moving, it has a completely opposite effect that can change the tumor microenvironment. So on the one hand, in CFCs, it's we want to avoid it, but on the other hand, when I'm moving, it gives incredible benefits. And one is a study that looked at getting older adults. The average age was 63, and as we know, as we age, as we talked about, our cardiac output is going to go down, but also increased inflammation. So that means that certain inflammatory markers are going up. So this study measured inflammatory markers, and they found that after 6 sprints, so I do a 8-minute warm up they did on a bike, and then they did a 30-second sprint, rested 4 minutes, 30-second sprint, rested 4 minutes, times 6. They did this 3 times a week for 3 weeks. They found they were able to lower certain inflammatory markers such as tumor necrosis factor and interleukin 6, IL-6. But what was also amazing is that they saw circulating levels of irisin, which is a myokin, and I'll touch on what a myokin is. It's a signaling molecule that's released from muscles when we move. Irisin increased. Why is irisin so important? Helps with energy metabolism, helps with what's going on up on our brain. So it has this neuroplasticity effect and protects our brain, but it also can help with decreasing the amount of strength we're losing as a result of sarcopenia as we age. So why is it important to think, well, do I have to go a little higher sometimes? Because we can, if we're time crunched, it fits in very nice to our schedule. Also, a lot of research looks at how this higher intensity training impacts mitochondria as well.
And so everybody think back what he said. 30
Yeah.
seconds, 30-second sprint. Okay.
And
I mean, and you got to realize something. For a guy that's a runner, a sprint is different than for me. I'm not a runner. So what will be a sprint for me is not going to be. So don't worry about being, a sprint just means you're going to run as fast as you can for 30 seconds.
and
then,
you know what?
And then wait 4 minutes, right?
Yeah. And then wait 4 minutes and then do it again. And here's the other thing. Number one, let's get back to, really nobody's watching you, so that's okay, right? It's just all going on up in here. But the other thing too is always meet your body exactly where it's at. And perhaps walking upstairs for 30 seconds is my sprint.
Right. Well, and tell them the study about 70 seconds.
Yeah. So I came across this study, oh, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, and I remember when I sent you the message with it, you're like, "Oh, this is great! I just moved and I got stairs." So
Right,
what we
right.
know is that in 70 seconds, 70 seconds, we are going to see a six-fold increase in activation of our NK cells, natural killer cells, just in 70 seconds of climbing stairs. Brilliant, brilliant. So
It's crazy.
we have people at the clinic. We've got a little step we use, and we just do different rounds. And I encourage everybody, throughout the day, just come in and do 70 seconds of just climbing up and down on this step. That's all you got to
Right.
do. That's all you got to do. So it's these little simple movements that we can. I don't have a big area in my house. I can do these things. I can use a park bench. I can use a curb outside 70 seconds. I'm doing my morning walk for 10 minutes. Okay, I'll do 70 seconds of stairs. I don't have a
Mm.
phone. I don't have a watch with me. Maybe just 20, 25 step up and downs off a curb, and that'll take you about 70 seconds.
Right. So, and you
Simple.
remember, natural killer cells are probably at least one of the most important ways of getting rid of CFCs. Okay, your natural killer cells. So, and they get suppressed very easily in that situation and many other situations. So we always, well, in fact, if any of you are taking medicinal mushrooms like shiitake, maitake, coriolis, turkey tail, what do? They increase natural killer cell function.
Right.
Well, here, imagine you're doing all that and you do this, what, once a day, at least once a day, you do
Yeah.
70 seconds of stair 70 seconds. That's
That's
not a
it.
lot. That's
That's
not a
it.
lot.
That's it. I
Now
so I
listen,
just
and you know that run, that sprint, right? That sprint you were saying,
yeah.
for 30 seconds. If someone's like in their house, they can't really go out, could they do like jumping jacks for 30 seconds? Would that?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Anything that is going to get that sense of I am working extremely hard. I'm working, and I think jumping jacks are great. I just wanted to touch on one more study looking at aerobic, and then we'll jump into speed of getting up and down on the stair. So a lot of us think, oh, you know what? I don't have enough time. I've got to be doing this for a long time. No, I disagree. So bringing in clinical research that looked at the acute effects. So that means right now, I don't have to wait. I don't know when this is going to get played, but we're 2 days before Christmas. It's going to be here quicker than Santa Claus, right? So this is the acute, what's happening right now, of 10 minutes of training. And what we see is we see an increase in leukocytes. We see an increase in something called a CD8 T cell through the roof and NK cells through the roof, 10 minutes. And the whole protocol was I got to work at 60% of my heart rate max for 10 minutes. That's it. That's it. So we talked a little bit earlier about heart rate. What is heart rate? How many beats per minute? Very, very simple way. Okay. And I'll go through this really slowly. How do I figure out, what is 60% of my heart rate max? Very simple equation. 220 minus your age is going to be your maximum heart rate. Predictive. Okay. But it's a really good formula to follow. So 220 minus my age gives me my heart rate max. I just times that by 0.6. And that will give me, it'll give me, for my age, 51, it gives me about 105 beats per minute. So for 10 minutes, I want to keep my heart rate at about 105 beats per minute. How do I know if I'm doing that? The easiest way is to palpate and just count. How many beats do you feel in 10 seconds and multiply that by 6? So I'll do that one more time just so everybody's listening. 220 minus my age gives me a maximum heart rate. I times it by 0.6, gives me X amount of beats per minute. You're not moving right now. You're sitting and listening. Watch the clock. Okay, there it goes. 2 fingers just on the radial pulse right here. Might take you a while to find it. There it is. Okay, I count times 4, but 15 seconds. That'll give me X. When we're moving, let's take it down to 10 seconds. Why? When we're moving, we might miss a beat or two. It's a little more challenging to figure out, but the more, or to palpate, but the more that you practice it, you'll be able to find it a lot quicker. And in 10
Okay, so
minutes, that was
what does that do if you get up to
so.
60%?
Okay, let me just grab exactly the research just so I can tell you, so I'm not. So it was total leukocyte count went up by 34%. CD8 T cells went up by 29%, and NK cells up 130%. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So what I have in people do in the clinic, I was telling you about that little step we've got a vibrating plate, and I get them to do that for 70 seconds. Depending on where they're at, their condition, then I get them to do, usually just stand on the vibrating plate, let their heart rate come down, and then we do another round of stair climbing. We just do that for 10 minutes. So that way I'm getting in the additional benefits of climbing up and down on the stairs as well. Very, very simple, very simple, very simple, very, very, very simple. And I think it really does a good job of challenges that mindset some of us might have. Oh, it needs to be for a long time. No, I can get this benefit in here. 70 seconds of stair climbing, 6-fold increase in NK cells. So very, very simple, very, very simple and practical steps that we can put in, pardon the pun. Why am I such a huge fan of stair climbing? Well, not only what it does for NK cells, not only what it does for the heart and our aerobic system, but what it also does for the muscles. Okay, we talked about these 10 additional sit to stands. Okay, and why is it important to go slow on the way up and even slower on the way down? Why is that important? Well, number one, what it's going to do is it's going to put the muscle under more what we would call time under tension. So the muscle is going to have to actually, in our body, is going to have to actually work for a longer time. Number two, what it's going to do is when we contract a muscle, we have two different types of contraction. So everybody listening at home right now, just grab your bicep and let's just flex our elbow. So I bring my elbow closer. Oh, I can feel that bicep. It's right now, it's shortening, concentric. Think go. When I lower my arm down, eccentric contraction. Think stop, eccentric. When we slow down our sit to stand, maybe 2 on the way up, 3 on the way down, and we're overloading the eccentric, we can develop more strength, more force. Very, very, very important.
Good. And how important, what is the relationship between strength and prognosis and longevity?
Wow. This is mind blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. Remember, we established that CFC is accelerated aging. So as we age, we lose strength. CFC, lose strength. The more strength you have, prognosis goes through the roof. Goes through the roof.
So that's why you measure grip strength when people first come.
Yes. First come. And this is something everybody can do. Okay. You can get them online. Don't use that one company, but just Google hand dynamometer. Okay. Grip strength. Grip strength is reflective of overall body strength. And I used to argue with my professors at school all the time with it. No, it's this measure. No, okay, I understand now. This is really interesting, Doc. We have, and I told you this earlier in the week, but I'll share it with everybody. We have just a great woman who's with us at the clinic right now, and she has lymphedema in her right arm, and pretty much hasn't used her right arm in almost 3 months now. Pretty much been.
She had lymph nodes removed.
I'm not quite sure. I'm assuming yes. Yeah. So right arm hasn't moved. We've been doing a lot of work, and she is so cool. She is so great with just her energy, and it's not easy for her to do what we're doing. It's not. And we did a grip strength with her, left hand, right? Did 3 tries, and I think her highest number with her left was, I'm gonna say, 46 pounds. Okay, so 46 pounds. Then did her right hand that hasn't been used in about 3 months. It was 48.6. So it was just like she was just flabbergasted. I haven't used this in 3 months. I'm like, yes, grip strength reflects overall strength. And it's such a great tool to use, because even if I've been sedentary for a long time, and even if my body's not very mobile, it's very safe. I just squeeze. I just squeeze. But here's the thing: what we know about grip strength with CFCs, higher your grip strength, better prognostic determination. If we look at it, a large study out of the UK, 500,000 people, higher your grip strength, lowered your chance of cognitive decline and Alzheimer's, which is just wow.
Wow.
I just want to see if I brought the study home with me. I just want to see, because there's a great chart. Oh, I think I left it at work, but I'll share it in one of our upcoming podcasts about strength. If we look at strength and all-cause mortality, having higher strength diminishes your chance of all-cause mortality. When we look at CFC, same thing. So what's one of the ways that I can instantly start to increase my strength? Incorporate those 10 sit to stands, incorporate the stair climbing, because that is going to increase the strength in your lower body, which will be reflected in a grip strength test, which is absolutely fascinating. If we look back again, let's go back to our stair example. Okay. We know that muscles, when they move, they release something called myokines, which communicate with so many other different systems of the body. We know that when we're stair climbing, we are activating type 2 muscle fibers. Okay. We have type 1 muscle fibers, type 2 muscle fibers. When Dr. Lodi's walking down the street to the bus stop, type 1. When he has to run and he goes anaerobic, type 2. When we're doing that sprint interval training, type 2. We know that a myokine called interleukin 15 is released from type 2 muscle fibers. That is going to have the biggest impact on NK cell. It wakes up the NK cells and brings them into action.
Oh, wow. So yeah, so that, all this stuff shows you that, by doing simple things, a few things throughout the day is doing more for your immune system than, going and getting some incredibly expensive procedure, which even like there's something we can do here in Thailand. We can send someone's blood off to the lab, to a special lab. They'll spin out the natural killer cells. If they find that they're inactive, they wake them up with IL-2. Then they put them into this growth medium. They expand them out to 10 billion, and we can give it back to the person. But now you can do that naturally. You know how much that cost?
How much does that cost?
Let's see, that cost. Just that to do it once, and you've got to do it weekly for a while. But just one, I think, cost about 500,000 baht or 600,000 baht, which is what is that?
Oh, I haven't been there for a few years.
It's about $2,000.
So wait, you're telling me I could walk up and down the stairs a few times for 70 seconds as opposed to this 2,000.
Yeah.
This is very, very interesting. Let's use our analogy of climbing up and going downstairs. Where are most of natural killer cells? Where do they come from? Where are they produced, Doc?
Bone marrow.
What do you think walking downstairs does for our bones?
Yeah.
And this is something, all of the influencers out there, the health and fitness influencers, I don't see a lot of people talking about bone health at all. And, this load we have to put on our body, not only for healthy bones as we age, but let's think about it. I'm dancing with CFCs. I want to do everything I can for my NK cells. Let's start working on loads going through our bodies to influence bone health. How can I
Right.
do that? How can I do that? Walking up and down the stairs. How about the sprinting you were talking about? Fantastic for increasing the load going through bones. And this is what's amazing is when we are moving our body, not only is that going to influence what's going through bones, but think about when we're contracting muscles, when we're moving, the force that's going through bones as well, which
Mm.
is
Right.
incredible. So when we talked on Wednesday, and you said, what are some other ways that we can work on our NK cells? Well, number one, we've got the stair climbing. Okay, I can deal with that. Yeah, I can handle that. I've got my 10-minute walk, my evening walk, 10 additional sit to stands, and some stair climbing. I can do that. We've touched on it 3 times already in our conversation. Sleep, sleep, and sleep.
Mm.
It is so important for NK cells. So if you have a 2-hour disruption to your sleep for that day, you're going to see that the day that you get up, the next day we measure your NK cells, 70% reduction for that day. Okay, I can handle one. Well, can you? One day? Really? But what happens if we're adding that up day after day, week after week? What's that doing to our NK cells? Non-existent.
Yeah.
Sleep,
Yeah.
sleep, 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 sleep. And something we talked about a few years ago in a series we did together, forest bathing. And maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that, what that does for NK cells.
Yeah, well, what forest bathing does to, and it's just a Japanese term, it's Ryoku, and that's their word for forest bathing. And basically, what they found was that not only does it stimulate natural killer cells, it wakes up the CD8s, which are the T cells that have been
Deep
activated,
cells, yeah.
and it also puts your brain from beta, which is your thinking and your uh, contemplating and all that sort of thing, back into alpha. Alpha is meditation. So basically, you go into meditation. And the reason I wanted to bring this up a moment ago is that if we took those natural killer cells out, they enhanced them, woke them up with the IL-2, expanded them to 10 billion. You put them back in my arm. Now I've got 10 billion of my own natural killer cells that are activated. If I'm depressed, if I'm angry, if I'm sad, if I'm afraid, if I'm regretful, within 24 hours, they're inactivated again.
Incredible.
Therefore, it's a field called psychoneuroimmunology. Okay, so therefore, going into the forest, but that alpha waves increasing your immune system is just incredible. Now you do that. So you take a walk every day. Now you don't have a forest. Go to a park. Every city's got a
Yeah,
park. Is going to
yeah,
have a park. Find a park and just go for a walk there or just even hang out there. But if you're going for
hang
the
out.
walk and you're there, imagine if it's not a big park, if you're in a place where it doesn't, at least, just go there and hang out. They even showed that if let's say you had no access, I don't know, let's say you were in prison, you had no access. Do you know that looking at a big
Yeah,
painting of a forest is going to help you?
yeah,
So why is that? Because that's where we come from. We're
yes,
earthlings. We came out of the jungles, out of the gardens.
yes,
That's where we
yes.
came from.
Can we give I like to call it homework. I want to give everybody a mission. I want to give everybody a mission, okay, for this podcast is I want you to go out in nature and exactly what you said. I want you to take a picture of nature and then I want you to send it to somebody who you care about because as you said, even looking at a picture is going to help reduce their stress and put them in that
Exactly.
parasympathetic
Exactly.
mode as opposed to sympathetic. So okay, I go out for a walk, take a picture, I'm going to send it to somebody. I just wanted to touch on one thing about NK cells as well. Um, I've always been, Doc, I've always been more is better. More is better. More is better. More is better. No, actually, more is not better. What we see after about 30 minutes of movement is that we're going to see NK cells have kind of reached how much activation they're going to have. So we don't need to do more than that. 30 minutes. Let's get past this notion that more is better. Okay, 30 minutes, cap it, you're done. Awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
All right.
exactly. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Um, so the sleep, the activities he's talking about, and then get somewhere in nature, look at pictures of nature, whatever it is. And the other thing is, we've talked just like just doing a couple minutes. If you 5 times a day for 2 minutes, anybody can commit to 2 minutes.
Right.
Just sit with your eyes closed, say a little prayer to God, and just thank you for another day. And then close your eyes very quietly, and with all your heart and soul, just listen to your breathing. And you
Mm.
won't last more than 3 seconds, and then you'll be off and running. As soon as you realize it, come back to your breath, and then you're off, come back to your breath. But do this 5 times a day for 2 minutes every day. After about a month, you're going to develop that mind muscle where you can actually listen with 100% of your being. And what's happening when you're listening? You're not thinking. Why is that important? Because as soon as we stop thinking, we take our brakes off of the immune system
Yeah.
and it goes through the roof. So, I mean, that's called psychoneuroimmunology. And if we put this all together, we can get, by doing nothing and spending zero money, we can get
Yeah.
more benefit than we would if we spent a lot of money at a lab.
Yeah, yeah, and we've joked about, the two of us joke about it. I'm like, Doc, I don't see any whiskers on your face. I don't have any whiskers on mine. We're not mice in a lab. Let's just get back out into nature. So,
Yeah.
when you were saying we were going through the bio, I was like, shoot, I should have just sent you one that said, listen, just tell them I get people fired up about chasing squirrels, because we got to learn how to
Exactly.
zigzag through life, right? Life's never in a straight line. We got to learn how to pivot. We got to learn how to
Yeah.
pivot. We're going to do, we've talked a lot about the aerobic, we've talked a lot about strength. We're going to do upcoming series on different podcasts, and I think it's very important we devote one specifically just to strength and the myokines, and especially what we can do as we age. This brings me to our third anchor that we talked a little bit about, and this is when I think a lot of people don't realize how important it is balance and stability. And something that you talk a lot about is health, is restoration of balance, being in balance with our health.
Mhm. Mhm. Right. And then and that's it. If we Here's the thing: when one looks at when you look at uh, our biochemistry, our body, and you realize that there are 36 septillion chemical reactions, that's 21 zeros every second,
Should
and
we
we're
try to
making
count them
37.
right
Yeah,
now? Oh shit.
yeah. I mean, can you
Oops.
imagine
Sorry.
every second? And then 37 million new cells you're making every second. So the
Wow.
point is, nobody can ever comprehend it. Not even a computer could comprehend it. It might be able, AI might be able to play with it, but to comprehend it. In other words, can you imagine understanding that? You can't understand it. Therefore, only God can understand it. Therefore,
Exactly. Yeah.
all we need to do, all we need to do is to bring our systems into balance, and they will work perfectly with the divine intelligence. So our goal, and that's what I love, the difference between the modern day medical practices, whether even naturopath, osteopath, and then MDs, which are allopath, they all have the word path at the end. The suffix is path, which stands for pathology. Pathology doesn't exist. There is no pathology. Pathology implies God's making a mistake. There's only adaptive physiology. Adaptive
which
physiology.
which is what exactly CFC is.
Exactly,
It's not
that's what it
something.
is, right? It's what it.
It's
That's
not
why
something.
we all have it.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. It's not
Hmm.
something, I've got to declare war on, and go out and, it's like, no, I've got to restore balance of my health, because why would I want to destroy something that is me? That is
Right,
me.
exactly,
Why
exactly.
would I
Because you
want to destroy something that is me? Yeah.
Exactly, it's madness. It's madness. And see, that's what the indigenous healing disciplines. Like if you went to the North American Native Americans, right? If you went
Mhm.
to Africans, European, I mean Australians, every place, every location on the earth had its old indigenous people, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine. what do they do that's different than anti-pathologies? What they do is one thing only: restore balance. So the
Hmm.
Chinese talk about it in terms of wind and things like that, and Ayurvedic terms talks about it in terms of doshas, and so they've all got their different terminology, but it's restoring balance. And once you've restored balance, then the divine intelligence which has created this will shine, and you'll have a condition known as health, right? So you're going to go into, and like, it's interesting what you brought up, and then we'll save everything else for specific podcasts. But
Hmm.
we've got to be like kids again. Kids,
Oh,
and
have to be.
one thing
Have
kids
to
are
be.
always doing, besides climbing trees and things like that, kids are always like walking on logs. They're always balancing. Have
Yes.
you ever noticed that? They
Yes.
love games like that, right? And
We're too, yeah, yeah. So we got the curb where I had you balancing that one day just
yeah,
outside the clinic, and it's like, okay, watch out, doc. I got lava on one side, great white sharks on the other. I mean, shoot, that's how we had fun when we were kids.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
No,
let's
tell
go.
tell tell them about that. What was that one study you were telling me about with the elderly and falls and balance?
Oh, yeah, and then that was balance. I mean, I just pulled it up on my computer right now. Uh, so I'm on CDC website. Okay, CDC website. I'll ask this question. Most people, I'll say, okay, what do you think is the number one cause of death in Americans over the age of 65? Probably would get, one of the three big horsemen, right? Pardon, cancer, cardiovascular, or Alzheimer's. Okay, probably get one of these. Um, it's neither of those. Falls. If we look at the CDC website, falls are the leading cause of injury for adults ages 65 years and older, and complications relating from falls, which is wow, it's mind-boggling. But one of the things that we do a lot with with our guests at the clinic is right away I get them not only the grip strength, but we start working on balance right from the get-go. I think it's really easy to get wrapped up in, oh, did I get my 10,000 steps? Did I get my 10,000 steps? Oh yeah, I got it. But my question is, what does your first step look like? What does
Right.
that first step look like? Are you able to take that first step? We've talked a little bit about sarcopenia, but think about it. Most people, as they age, do you have the ability to step off a curb and not fall over? What happens if you lose your balance? Are
Mm,
you able
mm.
to catch
Recover.
yourself? And most older people with this decline in muscle aren't able to do that. So one of the first things I get everybody to work on with me is let's play with some balance. And I'm going to do a real simple one with you right here right now. So I'm just going to put my phone down here, and it's really simple. I've got either a chair, a wall, I've got my counter right here, just in case I teeter a little bit. And I'm just going to lift a foot up, and I'm just going to hold it for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then I'm gonna change my other leg. 1, 2, 3. I find that one. It's also, I can do it in. I'll just show you. I can also do it in a door frame. I don't know if the light showed up there. So I'm just shadowing a door frame just in case I might teeter. 3 second hold. I do that about 6 times, and that's a great start for working on our balance, our proprioception. Proprioception, where the body is in space and how it's moving. So, this is something we've discussed that over the next course of these podcasts, we're going to put in a whole program how people can do these simple little balance movements, and we'll progress it with each podcast.
Yeah, yeah. And you were talking about falls and the elderly.
Oh,
One of the leading causes of death for elderly women, and I don't know why. I think they were looking at women because they think the assumption is that women get osteoporosis more than men. And yeah, they get it, they do, but not that much. Old men have just as much osteoporosis. So, but anyway, what they found was, but a woman can have so much osteoporosis that she can actually step off a curb and fracture her hip.
yeah.
So, but anyway, can you imagine if they fall, they fracture the hip? Hip fracture in an elderly is I forget what the data is, but it's a very, very high mortality rate. Why? Because they
Extremely
have
high.
to do they do the surgery on it, then they have to keep the leg immobile for
Yes.
some period of time, and it's that immobility that results in
Yes.
blood clots. They get a blood clot in their pelvis. It goes to their lung, and it's called a pulmonary embolus, and they die. So
Yep.
that's one of the, so keeping your balance up. And the other thing too is when you're balancing, as Darren has always points out, you're coordinating your
Yes.
muscles with your mind, and that coordination is very important.
It's huge, and this is something that I think we'll do in another podcast. But I just like to introduce this concept, and it might be a little out there for people, but it's this: our cognitive brain can't comprehend our movement brain. That's just how fascinating movement is to me. Our movement brain and this is what I run into a lot, right? And I mean, I was there at one point in my evolution. It was, oh no, that is the latissimus dorsi, and this is what it does. It adducts the shoulders and your quadriceps. It extends. And I'm just like, man, nothing happens in isolation.
Right,
So if
right,
we
right.
can, one other thing is when you're moving, is let's think of just moving that whole body. It's a symphony. It's a symphony.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
Doc, I'm biased. I'm biased. And muscle and movement for me, that's the oboe that tunes our symphony of health.
No, it is absolutely.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's it gets the whole metabolic process going and keeps it
Oh,
going, and and we just know that movement and strength and balance correlate
oh,
with longevity. Correlate with
with long.
longevity, right? Now, when we look at, for example, let's look at one of the longest, two populations I can think of that are extremely long lived. The people from Abkhazia, Georgia, which is just above near Russia up in the mountains, and the what do you call them? The Hunzas in the Himalayas. Okay,
Yes.
okay, and they both live very natural lifestyles. But what they do is because they live on slopes in the mountains. From the time they're kids until they're 130, 140, they're walking up and down like that at better, better with more ease than our
Yeah.
average 30-year-old can.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well, and that brings up a really interesting point too. Is let's start thinking lifespan versus health span. So yeah,
mm,
yeah, maybe I'm going to live a long time, but what's the quality of my life going to be in my last couple of decades?
yeah, yeah,
Am I
yeah.
going to be moving around, or am I going to be confined?
Right. We're wearing a diaper with tubes coming out of your nose, sitting in a wheelchair. And
Yeah,
is that being alive? I don't think so.
yeah, I don't know. Um, I didn't mention this, and this is amazing. We talked a little bit. What was it? 36. How many cells every second? 36
Septillion.
million. Septillion. I
Oh,
can't.
no, 37 million new cells per second. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I joke with you all the time. Let's try to count them, but shoot, there's another
Yeah.
second. With just how incredibly intelligent God is, and with the way He designed our body. When we do the separate podcast, just looking at strength, I also think we should talk a little bit about inflammation. Okay, one of the things that we know, one of the high inflammatory markers that we look at a lot is something called interleukin 6, and it's a nasty MFer. And what it does in the tumor microenvironment is it's not good. And we talked earlier about where does a lot of our interleukin 6 come from, Doc?
Fat. Well, fat, I
Fat.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that is another tissue. So if we're moving more, we're releasing these myokines like irisin that I touched on, which helps with you know homeostasis of energy using fat as fuel. But then we also look at interleukin 6 disrupts glucose metabolism, is a pro-inflammatory cytokine, and has been shown to actually increase tumor growth rate. Okay.
Yeah.
I do my 10. I even do one, man. I just do one. I'm going to do it right now. I got up from my chair. My muscles just released interleukin 6 as well. So now it's coming from muscle as opposed to, CFCs, fat, old cells. it has the exact opposite effect. So now it is anti-inflammatory, helps with glucose metabolism, and has been shown to actually influence what's going on in the tumor microenvironment.
Yep.
Incredibly intelligent, incredibly intelligent,
Right, right. And
incredibly.
then that's just a reminder is that we'll never be able to figure it out.
Oh,
So,
good
and
luck.
remember something, whatever CFCs need to grow and be healthy, so do our non-CFC cells. So we
That's it.
can't say, well, I'm gonna do a ketogenic diet and I'm gonna take this DON, this drug to block glutamine
Yeah.
metabolism, because the CFCs use that. Well, you know what else uses that? Every cell in your body, and glutamine is the number one fuel source for your lymphocytes. So no lymphocytes, you don't. I mean, so we can't. You can't figure it out. So what do? We bring it back into balance because God
Yes.
already figured it out. All right.
We
So listen.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I just touch on one
Yeah.
other thing about just showing? We had a little discussion on this, like just how exactly what you said. On the one hand, in this situation, if we look inside the tumor microenvironment, lactate is a nasty critter, nasty, nasty critter. But when it's released from muscle, when I'm moving anaerobically or I'm doing my sprint, lactate is also a signaling molecule that protects the brain, and it's going to actually signal more GLUT4 receptors on muscles. So that means muscles are going to be able to pull more glucose in to store as glycogen even at rest. So it's incredible, incredible.
Right. Right. And so
Incredible.
the lactate, which is also another form of lactic acid, right? So we know that CFCs produce acid. That's what they produce,
Yeah.
lactic acid. The difference is what? Remember, we talked about at the very beginning. Aerobic glycolysis is the Warburg effect. What he's
Yes.
talking about is anaerobic glycolysis, which comes from exertion. That turns out to be, in that environment, helpful. In this environment,
Extremely helpful.
not helpful.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, only God can figure it out. And listen,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it with that, and because we got so much to talk about, and I hope everyone is as excited as we are about this information because with not a lot of effort, but just consistency, we can improve not only our immune system, our mind, our relationships, everything. Everything will get better, and we'll sleep better that night. If you were
Yes.
sitting on the couch all day, it's hard to get a good night's sleep. But if you got moving around during the day, it's easier to get sleep. So
It's
everything works better.
yeah, and once again, I'm biased, right? And I don't hide that I'm biased. But I'll just quickly go over one more time, guys. Okay, those listening, 10-minute walk in the morning, 10-minute walk at night, 10 additional sit to stands, and let's throw in some 70 seconds air climbing. Keep it simple.
Wow. And what a
That's
way to
it.
start.
Yeah.
What a way to start.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic, Darren. Thank you so much. I really,
No,
really
Doc,
appreciate it.
thank you, man.
Yeah, yeah.
You opened up a lot of just yeah, and I run with it. I go down the rabbit hole with a lot of stuff, and let's find new things all the time. Thank
Yeah,
you.
let's do it. And let's keep sharing it. And I'll
Yeah,
I'll I'll have you back soon, and everyone will um look forward to this and get into it, and remember your homework.
yeah. Also, so the movement, and let's get a picture of nature, and let's send it to somebody we care about.
There you go. All right,
All
Joel.
right.
So bye bye.